Hey there, Live Life Happy community. I'm so excited because I have an amazing guest on the show today. Now, I know I say that all the time, but I feel extra close with this author. We have gone on a journey together, and I've just learned his story, and he is one of those remarkable humans that you instantly connect with and you just instantly love them because of how vulnerable and honest and just real they are. And this is a wonderful opportunity today to celebrate this remarkable author. He has brought so much courage and depth and real honesty into his book as well. John Jeff Hutter, he is the author of Gutsy Grief. And this book is so phenomenal. He combines his heart, he combines his lived experience, he combines everything through the lens of scholarship. He has a master's in happiness studies and he explores grief, not just emotionally, but from a very thoughtful way, blending research and reflection and just real life ways that feel so honest and down to earth. So I am so excited to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for being here, John Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It feels like a very surreal moment, and full circle.
Yeah, and Gutsy Grief, it's not your typical take on loss. It's not your typical take on dealing with grief, and so can you let's jump right into your book. Let's talk about how society is always about this idea that grief is something to just get over. And your book is really offering a refreshing perspective on that. So what do you think, the world has gotten wrong about grief?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that grief is this four-letter word that we are not allowed to discuss, or that when we discuss it, it's reserved for certain spaces. And I think that the message I have here is that grief actually helps you get to know yourself in a way that would be impossible otherwise. And again, I think that it's important to distinguish acute grief and chronic grief. Like certainly after you have experienced something like the death of a loved one or something unexpected that has blindsided you, of course you're going to experience the pain of loss. But over time, I think that grief and really anything like loss, trauma, things that we see as negative can be the raw fuel for transformation.
I love that, how you express it, the raw fuel for transformation. And so, okay, your title, okay, it's incredible. Gutsy Grief, Turning Loss into Self-Discovery. And can you tell us, the context of this? What does gutsy mean to you and why you chose that title?
Yeah, I don't think I chose gutsy. Gutsy chose me.
Mm.
Um, it was a word that I have never used to describe myself, but it was a word that kept coming up in conversations with other people over not just during the writing period, but over the last 10 years, since my dad died. And I would often find people describing my approach or my choices as gutsy. And I think for a long time I resisted it because it almost felt too declarative for me to take. And because it's synonymous with courage, I felt like courage wasn't something, or bravery wasn't something that you could use to describe yourself. It felt like something that was bestowed upon you. And so I kind of resisted this idea of gutsy for a long time, but it kept coming back to me. And I think the final moment where I realized that the universe was delivering this word to me was when I was in Finland with the Happiness Studies Academy for a retreat to the Arctic Circle. And we were discussing the all of the different reasons that Finland is one of the happiest countries in the world consistently. And there was a professor there from the University of Helsinki, I believe, and he introduced this concept called sisu. And it's this idea of resilience that the Finnish people embody because, like for half of the year it's almost entirely dark. And so when I found that, or when that concept was introduced to us, I was like, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to Google it. And once I got into the Wikipedia entry, I learned that there's no direct English translation for Sisu. And then boom, there's the word gutsy. That like the closest English equivalent is the word gutsy. And I felt like it was like the final moment from the universe to be like, hey, all of these things connect. Like this this word is yours. So that's where Gutsy Grief came to be, because it is about approaching grief with a sense of, I would say, curiosity, with a sense of courage. And I think most of all, like the question I keep coming back to with Gutsy Grief that I always ask myself is, um, what happens if I let myself actually feel my feelings? What happens, or when's the last time that I allowed myself to be hurt or disappointed? And so that's really where it comes from.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And it's so common for us to shove things down and just put things down. And you're right, it like takes this degree of guts and vulnerability and courage to really honor those feelings that are coming up for us when we do go through loss. And I just I love that you landed on it. And you are the epitome of gutsy as I've come to know you. So it's I always call you the gutsy guy. John Jeff, the gutsy guy. Okay, so you share about discovering your father's journal after his death, and can you share a little bit about how powerful this and intimate, how that was an intimate starting point for you, and how did finding those journals change your relationship with grief?
Yeah, so my dad died by suicide 10 years ago, June 2nd, 2016. And it was like the greatest shock of my life. It was something that I never would have expected. And so as a result of that, there were obviously a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion that was woven into the grief. And so after he died, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 months later, when we were cleaning out his home office, I went into a filing cabinet and I found that there was like a loose back to it. And so I jiggled it around and eventually like removed it, got it out. But then I found behind that there were, I mean, a stack of hundreds of loose leaf paper in the back of the filing cabinet. And they were 30 years, over 30 years worth of journals that he had kept that none of us knew that he had been keeping. And so, of course, over the course of the next couple of months, I read through all of the journals. And I write about this in the book, but I mean, the journals are a really complicated, multifaceted artifact. But I think the biggest like takeaway from them is that it really opened up this channel to communicate with my dad in a way that I didn't expect. And what it became for me, it became a lot of things for me, but one of the most prominent things it became for me was this way of transforming the relationship that I had with him. Because I think we think of something like death as a terminal final end. And when someone dies, the link to them also dies. And through the journals, something I discovered is that while our relationship no longer existed in a physical, tangible plane, they evolved to be something, or it evolved to be something that existed through these journals. And so what that looks like practically is like throughout the book, I talk a lot about moments where I experienced difficulty or I encountered a challenge and wishing that I could ask him for advice or wanting to go to him with a question. And in a sense, the journals created a channel for me to do that. And again, it's very different than going to him and asking the question directly over the phone. But when I had a question, oftentimes the journals would offer a reflection or an idea that helped me get to a solution. And what that taught me, again, not just about death, but about change, is that so much of the pain that we experience when navigating loss or change is a resistance. And when I stopped resisting reality that he was no longer here physically, it opened up so many opportunities to reconsider what our relationship actually looked like.
Oh my God, what a gift and what a beautiful lens that you've chosen to see this through as an opportunity to get closer to your dad, even though his physical presence isn't with you. And how beautiful are those journals? And I have to say now, when I do my morning pages and I'm writing in my journal, I think one day my kids might be reading this. I just want to celebrate how those journals really allowed for you to reflect and really deepen your connection with your father, and what a gift that is. And I do love how you've woven them into your book. And your book is such a beautiful collection of your insights and your learning. But then it's also opening up. Well, here's an opportunity for the reader, like your own learning is there too. And you've woven in so nicely your dad's journals into it of reflection, and a lot of readers will find themselves in your stories and how you've woven in your dad's beautiful entries. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you talk about how grief is vandalizing identity or something. You talk about vandalizing identity, and how it's forcing us to meet the person that's underneath this, right? It's almost like it completely destroys us. And but it's like
Yeah.
actually it's like an unearthing of something new. Can you unpack that for us? Because the way you talk about it in your book is just remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, when we think about anything that devastates us, um, as much as it devastates us, in equal proportion, it offers an opportunity to treat that disruption as the catalyst for self offers authorship or self discovery. And I think like it's a I think it's a really challenging nuance and sometimes a paradox that is part of the reason why we don't talk about it more. Because the moment we say that something helps us, it almost invalidates the pain that it causes. And I think that um, for me specifically, um, when I think about all of the damage that grief did to my life, it also revealed where structural integrity was at its poorest. And so, what I mean by that is like, um, grief showed me the areas of my life that I like to think of grief as like grief is kind of like an earthquake. It shakes everything to its core. It absolutely destroys things and causes havoc, but it also shows you the parts of your life that are structurally sound, that can withstand those types of disruptions. And then it also shows that maybe some things that were being held up weren't meant to be held up. And so I think one of the examples I'll use is relationships. I think that um, in the aftermath of my dad's death, I was able to see um, some of my relationships that, or I should say, I think it revealed to me some of the relationships that were never meant to be. So ones that disintegrated in the months after his death because those people weren't there or they weren't capable of being in relationship with someone who was navigating complex, multifaceted, acute grief. And then there were those buildings that withstood the disruption, and those were some of my closest relationships. Those were the people who were with me when I was at my most challenging, when I was struggling after that. And so I guess like to take it back to your question, yeah, I think like grief has this way of destroying so much in our life, but I think on the flip side, it also shows us the things that can withstand any type of disruption.
Oh, how beautiful is that metaphor, and that, looking at it from an opportunity of growth, but not moving there too fast, also acknowledging the chaos
Yeah.
and the disruption that it can cause. And you've done that so beautifully in your book. And it reminds me of like when we have really powerful wind, all the dead branches fall off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
and it's
so
like, oh, sorry. Yeah, it's like I think that there's a lot of cleanup afterwards to identify like what those dead branches are, and also to get curious about why are they dead branches to begin with.
I love that. Okay, which actually that is a beautiful segue from my next question. So you really do allow people to participate in their own healing and their own becoming. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what does it mean to participate in your own becoming?
Yeah, I think that participating in your own becoming is appreciating the agency you have in your life. And I know from experience that I used my dad's death and my subsequent grief as the excuse for everything in the years after his death. And and again, this is the nuance. While the grief I was experiencing was very real, I also began to see that there were unintended side effects that negatively impacted my life. And I refer to this in the book as like your eggshells, those jagged pieces that you leave behind emotionally, relationally, spiritually, financially, that not only create challenge for your life, but create this barrier for other people to get close to you. And once I began to see that my grief was very real and existed, but there were also these things that I was doing that actually didn't that I didn't have to do and that I could clean up. I found that there was this moment where I could handle or hold the conflicting realities of the pain I was experiencing and my agency in choosing what I did every day with that. And where I took responsibility, where I communicated more clearly, and where I opened up more. And so I think all of those things then are the recipe for allowing the pain that you're experiencing in grief or in change or in loss. And again, it's not just death, it's any type of disruption to your identity or what you believe to be true about the world to reveal what's important to you and also demonstrate that every day we wake up, we have a choice of how we want to interact with the world. And it's a, I would say it's a really bitter pill to swallow to acknowledge that I can feel pain and also understand that I have a responsibility as a human in the world to not turn that pain into something that inflicts pain on other people. And that doesn't mean emotional policing. It doesn't mean denying your experience. It's just understanding that no matter what you're feeling, it doesn't give you permission. It doesn't give you the permission slip to be a jerk to other people.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my favorite chapters in your book is about walking on eggshells or clean up your
Yeah.
eggshells.
Yeah.
That clean up your eggshells. And that's really beautiful in your book and how you have that theme of agency and so the reader really does discover through your book is that that we can choose how loss has shaped us. And you raise such a really good point too that I love is that it's not just death, it could be loss of anything, relationships. And your book actually, it's surprisingly both my kids now have moved out. And your book has helped me in so many ways because I realized that I'm actually really sad about it and that I'm actually like really missing my kids. And I discovered through your book that this is a loss and it makes sense that I have sorrow around it. It's like I had my little people with me like for so long. And so I realized that that's what the emotion was that I was going through and that I do have agency. So now I've booked flights to see them. I'm going to see them next week. And I just really love that how you frame it in your book and you encourage that agency and you encourage people to take ownership but not in a shame blame kind of like mean to yourself kind of way The other part about your book that really stands out to me that's so remarkable is this idea that it's not stages, it's not timelines, it's and I love how you have zero patience for that kind of thing, and you're like, this is not a formula, and I cannot wait for people to read your book because I love the way you speak so candidly, and you're just like, and so this is one thing. Talk about this idea of like your passion behind, okay, no more stages, no more formulas, no timeline. Like, grieving is personal and it's not that you're grieving wrong, quote unquote. Did
Yeah,
I open a
I
can of
think
worms?
no, this is great. This is great. I would say that I've always been fascinated by the human condition and why we do the things we do and how we interact with each other. And so, as a result of that, I am constantly interrogating why we do the things we do and whether or not they're because we actually want to do them or because we feel like we should do them because culture, society, or our families have ingrained this in us. And so I think one of those examples is the phrase, I'm sorry, which I have such a beef with in the context of grief or loss. Not because it's not well intentioned. I think so many people say, I'm so sorry for your loss as their way of extending compassion or to show sympathy. And so I'm not judging the people who are using that phrase. I've just began to look at it as something that acts as like the period at the end of a sentence. It is a conversation ender. And what I find whenever I'm telling my story and people begin to say, I'm so sorry for your loss, it effectively ends any conversation. And everything we know to be true about healing is that healing it requires co-creation. It requires conversation. It requires connection. And if we are saying something like, I'm so sorry, it immediately closes off the opportunity for connection. And to some extent, it puts it on the person who is grieving or receiving the sorry to do something next with it. Whereas if we begin to approach this with a question mark or curiosity, it opens up conversation. It's expansive. It offers the opportunity for the receiver to share more about what's going on for them. And certainly, if they don't want to talk about it, it also offers the opportunity for them to say, you know what, I don't want to talk about it right now. But again, I think we are socialized to um handle things with kid gloves and because we are afraid of what we will receive. And I think so many of us avoid hard conversations with people in grief because we don't want to feel bad. We don't want to upset that person because that's going to upset us. And I think that in a lot of ways, it also triggers something in ourselves. And I even think about things like funerals. I talk about my dad's funeral in the book and how like bizarre it was and how it opened up this like curiosity that I have around like funerals in general and how so much of it is a performance for other people as opposed to the person who has died, and how so much of the emotion I think that we see in funerals to some extent is also a projection of attendees' own mortality. But anyway, yeah, I really, and again, I'm not challenging to be contrarian or challenging to be judgmental. I'm just trying to open up a question mark of like, why do we say this? Like, what are we actually trying to get at here? And is our intention and the action we choose actually best aligned, or is there another way?
Oh, and this is the other reason why so many people will benefit from your book to understand also about someone else who might be grieving or going through loss or change, how to like support them in a really effective way and understand what they might be going through as well. So your book is great also for that. I always now I think of you every time someone has a loss and then I see all the my condolences or I'm sorry. Like I see it all and I think of you and I actually have changed how I respond now. And I'll say something along the lines, I can't imagine how hard this must be. Or I'll say something more that I feel like, for example, if someone's lost their furry friend, as I know you've just lost your sweet puppy. I know how hard that is. So I share in the pain with them and I express how I've been through that, and that is so hard, and I wish I could take that pain away from you because I know that feeling so lovingly. So it's this is the one thing I do really appreciate about your book, that it's going to be so educational for so many people and supportive in so many ways. And I love your flip side of don't apologize for your emotions too. So I'm sorry, like goes both ways. It's like don't apologize for what you're experiencing. You're not doing grief wrong. I love that aspect of your book as well.
Yeah, and I think that like if there's one thing that I don't say explicitly in the book, but is implied throughout all of the chapters, is this idea of like gutsy means elevating our level of consciousness and elevating our level of self-awareness of ourselves and others. Because again, if we go back to the example of I'm sorry's or interrogating why we make the choices we make, um, when we question why we're saying I'm sorry and we're saying thoughts and prayers, engaging with people in a more meaningful way requires us to be conscious and self-aware and to get out of this autopilot that many of us have fallen into because we're multitasking and we're asking ChatGPT to help us make a decision and we're doom scrolling on social media. So much of it means that we're responding with these templates or with these statements or phrases that we've said before because it requires less cognitive load. And so that's also a conversation I'm forcing here is like, how can we actually be more conscious of ourselves and others so that we can be more intentional with the things we say and that what we offer people actually has substance. And again, look, I probably say I'm sorry just as much as anyone else. When I am someone who is trying to be there for someone who's experiencing loss, I have to think consciously because the first thing I want to say is I'm sorry, or I'm thinking of you, or let me know if you need anything. All of those phrases that we just like pull out of the back of our brain. Um, Responding meaningfully and intentionally requires conscious choice. And conscious choice means effort, and it's thinking through what can I actually say that represents how I'm feeling right now. And sometimes it's saying, I don't know what to say. Sometimes saying, I don't know what to say is better than I'm so sorry. So,
Oh, yes, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother book too, like the gutsy
yeah,
life. The gutsy. Okay, so
yeah,
I love this concept that you brought up, and I want to bring us back to the gutsy grief book, but I love this idea of just really question where we have these template stamps of how we're responding and to really
yeah.
look at them in if we could approach them in more meaningful ways. Okay, so if someone were listening today, is someone listening today and they're in the thick of grief, they're feeling, raw, confused, or they're just overwhelmed, what would you want them to know?
Mm. So this requires cognitive effort because I'm not going to say something that is a template of things that I've said before. Um, I think what I would say is presence is the greatest gift we have in grief. I
Mm.
think that the more present we are in the painful moments that we may be inclined to brush aside, or that we don't want to forget, or that we would rather forget. I I I offer up that this could be a reminder of what's meaningful to you. The most painful moments can reveal to you what matters the most for you, and that is kind of like the first click of the door opening to get to know yourself. Um, and again, I don't want to silver line grief. It is awful. Loss is painful. Um, feel it and offer yourself just a sliver, a 1%, a crumb that maybe there is something in here that's a gift. Um, and I think like what I always say is like, don't allow it to override the feelings of grief, but it's that hope in the back of your head that something may come from this.
Oh, that's beautiful. And thank you for your thoughtful answer and thinking
Yeah.
that through so nicely. And okay, so you talk about portals in your book. I love this idea of portals of self-discovery. Can you share one of the portals that maybe surprised you the most that you've come up with?
Um, yeah, I would say the portal that's the most surprising because it may feel the least connected to what we appreciate to be grief is a portal that is called Killing Corporate Johnny. It's probably the funniest chapter of the
Yes.
book, but what it's about is and again, this may be specific to me, but grief and reading my dad's journals revealed for me how much I had outsourced my identity to work. And some of that is specific to my relationship with my dad and how ambition and achievement was one of the places that we had like a shared understanding and a shared language. And also where I probably inherited some not so great attitudes or belief towards identity as in regard to work. And it surprised me most because I didn't going if you would have told me that one of the biggest takeaways I had from navigating grief would be um, understanding how much work had taken over my life, I wouldn't have expected it. I would have thought that grief taught me something about family or about love or about relationships. I wouldn't have expected that so much of what I learned about myself in grief was related to work. And so that portal really dissects, um, again, understanding how much I had outsourced my identity to work and how that was overriding and numbing other areas of my life where I wasn't paying attention.
And what a beautiful gift. And I love the way
Yeah.
you bring up these portals. It's like that, that this grief has opened up these doorways, so to speak, to other beautiful, fantastic learning opportunities and growth. And it really does, you never at any point minimize the toughness of grief, but you open everyone up to reframing it, to seeing it as portals or opportunities. And your book is just going to be such a companion. I always say it's like having your best friend beside you. That's kind of like doesn't take any shit, but also is very honest with you and compassionate and loving at the same time. So I really do love that. Okay, so
Thank you.
your book is a companion to a human experience, which is grief. Um, what's something that you hope your book is going to have? What impact do you hope your book is going to have on the world?
Oh, that's a big question. The impact that I want it to have on the world, um, is to see that grief is an entry point. Grief is an entry point into transformation. And that what I hope people get from it is to help learn what happens to identity, agency, self trust, all of those things after life breaks you. And I think that the work here is to offer something to people that allows them to understand how some of the most awful things that happen in our lives. There's a post disruption identity reconstruction
Say that
after
fast
life.
5 times.
What'd you say?
Say that fast 5 times. Post
Yeah.
identity. Say it again. It's
Post
good.
post disruption identity reconstruction after life changes you. And um yeah, and grief is where I learned this, and I know it's where other people will learn this. And um yeah, period.
That's beautiful. And I quote you, loss will change you. And you so beautifully walk us through that in your book, and you teach us that it transform us and it can shape us in such beautiful ways. And I always say that books change lives, and I'm so excited that Gutsy Grief is one of those books that is going to have such a huge impact. Everybody can grab a copy of your book. It's available everywhere that books are sold. Gutsy Grief, Turning Loss into Self-Discovery by John Jeff Hutter. And obviously, read the book and write an honest review. You are going to love it, and I truly encourage everyone to get a copy, and also get a copy for someone that you love that maybe is struggling with grief, because this is really a book that needs to be on our shelves. Because life isn't always sunshine and butterflies. We are going to go through grief at some point, or loss, or change, and we want John Jeff right beside us, walking us through that. So I'm going to leave the last word over to you, John Jeff. So what final thought would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Oh, that is a heavy task. Okay. Well, because I am someone who believes in signs, I think what I'll do is I'm just going to open a page on the book and we are going to find a quote.
Love it.
I hope you can edit down the time. Oh, here we go. Are you ready?
We're
The
ready.
quote is, understanding doesn't precede expression, it emerges through it.
Oh, you have to read that again.
Okay. Understanding, hold on, I lost it now. Understanding doesn't precede expression.
Oh,
Hold on,
that's
hold on, wait, hold on. Hold on. I'm
you're
glad this
you're
isn't
you're not
I'm
quoting
glad
yourself right.
I'm glad this isn't I'm glad this isn't live.
It is
Um
live. We're live, John
is
Jeff.
it
We're
really?
not editing. We're not gonna. Yeah.
Oh my
So
God,
that's
okay.
okay
Well,
though. Even you know what? Close your eyes and find another page. I bet you it's another beautiful message, because
okay,
every
fine.
single book is just every single part of your book is good.
Okay.
He's closing his eyes. He's fanning through and ready. Here we go.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Okay. Okay, it's a passage. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. Therapy helped see my parents as people, loving, flawed, and shaped by their own histories, trying in their own ways. I had rarely let that perspective in. Parents are supposed to be steady examples. Seeing them as human gave me more empathy for them, and at the same time, made room to acknowledge how much our family dynamic had shaped my tendencies, behaviors, and wounds. And I think, like, ending on this, it's a reminder that grief also teaches us our shared humanity and how we are all imperfect and we are all figuring it out together, which I hope is a reminder of the permission we should all give each other to share our experiences out loud, whether they are fully formed or are the emotional or spiritual equivalent of dumping out our junk drawer.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, John Jeff. And
Yeah,
thank you so much for being here and sharing all your beautiful thoughts and wisdom and knowledge and everything. I appreciate you.
thank you.